All right, today we're going to talk the Nike React Metcon Turbo versus the Reebok Nano X1 Grit. Which is the right training shoe for you? Stick around and find out. All right, so what we're going to do here, we're going to compare these two shoes up close in all the details that matter. So I've been testing these now for a couple days, variety of different workouts, sometimes using them side by side, sometimes switching from one pair of shoes to the other. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to highlight specifically where the differences are and things like that. Okay, here they are side by side on foot, the Reebok Nano X1, Nike React Metcon Turbo. The X1 has good width, nice and comfortable, kind of stretchy upper, but the mesh upper on the React Metcon Turbo is good as well. These run short and narrow. I had to go half size up, but once I did that, width is good. Maybe a tiny bit long, but that's okay because otherwise my toes were too cramped and the pair I had to send back. Regular laces on both, I'm liking that. More drop in the X1, 7 millimeters versus 4. And overall more cushion in the heel, in the midfoot, in the forefoot. The Nike React Metcon Turbo, 4 millimeters of heel to toe drop, and feels flatter, but there's less stack height too, right? There's less stuff between your foot and the ground, so you get more of a low center of gravity, down and stable kind of feel. Plus the super firm heel. This thing makes a lot of noise though, just like the Metcon 5, Metcon 6. Clip clop when you're walking on any kind of firm surface. Not a big deal, but it bothers some people. Neither shoe has a heel cup, but the Reebok's got the comfort collar. This is aggressively curved. This may come up and contact the back of the ankle, back of the leg for some people, and may be uncomfortable. For me, it's not bad. It's bearable. The React Metcon Turbo, the collar's taller than the Metcon 6, fits me better. I like it. Sound test. Reebok Nano X1 versus Nike React Metcon Turbo. You can hear that noisy heel on the React Metcon Turbo. Okay, so a quick word on how I tested these. I lifted weights. I did running, I did sprinting, jogging, box jumps, jump rope, cycling on my new bike erg. I know you don't really need special shoes for that, but I did wear them. I walked, I put a good amount of miles on both with a 37-pound backpack. I also did the Miller Hero Wad as part of the Go Ruck Tribe program. So I did all those things, and either wore one shoe or the other or switched off between sets and all that kind of stuff. So that is how I tested. Let's start with the heels because that is as good a place as any. The React Metcon Turbo, just like most of the other Metcon shoes, has a super stiff, stable heel. This is really rigid plastic. It's hard. There's absolutely zero give in this part of the shoe. And so that kind of goes, you can see the diamond-shaped heel here, and you can see that that goes all the way around. But this entire part, very stiff, very firm, and that includes the TPU heel counter as well, which is truncated here in the Metcon Turbo model for weight savings. But what does this mean? So what is the practical effect of this? Well, first of all, it's very stable in the heel because of this outsole being so super solid, so super stable. But here's the other thing. This is also what makes this shoe noisy. Just like the Nike Metcon 6, just like the Nike Metcon 5, the clip clop when you walk with these on hard surfaces is very noticeable, very loud. And it's because of this rim of the heel. This edge is so super solid and stiff. It's a little more flexible towards the inside, but it is a very rigid heel around the outside. In comparison, on the X1, we have a totally different situation, to be right up front about it. You'll notice the heel, you see how I can press that in easily? A good amount of foam here in the heel. There's rubber on the outsole that's pretty firm, but this is nothing at all like the heel on that React Metcon Turbo. This has a good amount of give, a good amount of cushion, and you can see there's the TPU skeleton. I think they call this the speed chassis or something. That part's pretty stiff, but you can see there's not much of it, and it's surrounded by all that really cushioned foam. So that's one of the most noticeable differences between these two shoes, especially when you're running. So the Nano X1 has the very, I won't say very cushioned heel because it's not a running shoe, it is a cross trainer, but it has noticeably more cushion, especially when you're heel striking. When you're landing on the heel, this shoe is significantly more comfortable. And, you know, quite frankly, Reebok says right up front, they've combined the float ride energy system of a running shoe with a training shoe to come up with the X1, right? The X1 is no longer, or the Nano is no longer laser focused on CrossFit style stuff. They're trying to make something that is more versatile. So that's key difference number one that you're probably going to notice is the difference in those two heels. Okay, so talking weightlifting, the Metcon feels very firm, very stable in the heel. There is React foam cushion on the inside, so there is some cushion. You can feel that when you're lifting, but it's pretty minimal. The drop is also low on this shoe as well. I estimate it to be a 4mm heel to toe drop, similar to the previous Metcon 6 and Metcon 5. The drop, of course, being the difference in height between your heel and your toes. You get a kind of flat, low to the ground feel without a whole lot of stack height, right? There's not a whole lot of material in between the bottom of your foot and the floor when you're wearing this shoe. Combine that with the rigid heel and it feels pretty stable, pretty supportive. Now the X1, on the other hand, you have clearly much more stack height. You've got more going on here. This is a 7mm heel to toe drop. So there's just more stuff under your heel, and some of it's fairly cushioned, right? So you can feel this when you're lifting, especially if you kind of rock back on your heels. You can feel the compression in the foam in this midsole portion. It's exaggerated, especially if you kind of lean back into your heel. If you're kind of staying flat on your feet, it's a little bit less noticeable. And this foam, it's firm, it's cushioned. It's not too cushioned though, so I'll put some weightlifting clips in. I was able to do all my heaviest lifts in these. And, you know, I think it's fine for a cross training shoe, right? It's not an Olympic lifter. It's not really the shoe you put on to go do a 1RM back squat or a 1RM deadlift or snatch or anything like that, right? It is a cross training shoe. The other noticeable thing when we're talking about the outsole, or the midsole rather, is there are some dramatic differences there as well. So let's take a look at the X1 here. So notice from the side profile, so again, more stack height. You can see there's foam up here, there's foam here, but there's this TPU piece, this rigid piece that comes up, the speed chassis. This is actually very nicely placed because this gives some pretty good arch support. That's right where the arch of your foot would be, and the X1 offers noticeably more arch support than the React Metcon Turbo. Why is that? Well, that's interesting. Let's take a look. So they've done something kind of quite different with the shoe this year. And so first of all, let me take out the removable midsole. So this is the React foam, of course. But notice what we're left with. So this thing is super flexible. The outsole is really made of kind of like two different pods. So the front part and the heel part, these are glued on or attached somehow. And then in between, you get something that's super duper flexible. I mean, you see that there, which, you know, gives you great kind of flexibility in the shoe and things like that. And if you look in the shoe, there's nothing else in there, right? Well, that's where the midsole comes in. So the midsole being made from React foam, mostly you can see the React foam here, but notice in the center, there's this rigid plastic bridge piece. And so when this is in the shoe, this kind of bridges the gap, so to speak. We'll line it up here. You can see it bridges the gap from that front pod to the heel pod. And does this work? I mean, sort of, kind of, but this shoe feels like really weak arch support because this doesn't come up very high. And this part is plastic, but it's covered with foam, so there's still a good amount of foam here. It's not, it's not solid plastic all the way up to here. Rather, it's kind of like dished in, and there's still a good amount of foam on top of the midfoot. So overall, the arch support is significantly better in the Nano X1, and again, it's because of where this. Well, it's because of the midsole, but also where the speed chassis kind of ends up being on the inside of your foot. All right, so how about up in the forefoot? Because when we're doing cross training, CrossFit style WOD, we're doing all kinds of stuff, right? The forefoot cushioning on the X1 is pretty good. It's you can feel there's some cushion up front, and I believe the marketing material says the Float Right energy system is largely up in the front, although you can see there's foam all throughout the shoe. So pretty good forefoot cushion. Similar on the React Metcon Turbo, but the thing you have to realize, when you take that midsole out, and again, between my fingers in the bottom of the shoe, there's really nothing other than the pieces you see here, this and this. Really, the only foam you get is the relatively thin portions of React foam that are here up front, right? And so you can see this is not a ton of foam. In fact, it's a pretty minimal amount of foam. So the forefoot cushioning in the React Metcon Turbo actually feels inferior to me compared to the Nano X1. And so with that, then, I'm prepared to say the Nano X1 is the better shoe for running, in my opinion, in my experience. I did some side-by-side running, but it has noticeably more cushion in the heel, in the midfoot, better arch support, and then better cushion up in the forefoot as well. Okay, so let's talk about, though, the fact that there's more stack height, there's more cushion. The Nano X1 does feel less stable when you're lifting heavy weights, especially if you kind of rock back into that heel, because there's cushion there, and it's noticeably better for running, but it's also slightly less stable for lifting heavy weights. That's where the React Metcon Turbo has an advantage. It's a low drop. There's a minimum of stack height. You feel flat. You feel close to the ground, low center of gravity, and there's not as much to compress, especially in that super stiff, super solid heel. And quite frankly, when you're lifting weights, when you're holding the barbell or kettlebells or whatever, the whole thing's pressing down onto this piece, the front piece, and then that middle bridge piece. It feels plenty fine. I did some cleans, some power cleans. I'll put video of that in as well, and really no particular issue with using the React Metcon Turbo. I also did some heavy lifting in these, though, and having the drop is nice, especially on the front squats and things like that. But it definitely, as the weights get heavier and heavier, it gets noticeably less stable because of the foam, because of the cushion. Let's talk uppers for a moment. So the Nike has this kind of dual mesh, and it looks nice. It looks sharp. It looks good. It is reasonably comfortable and breathable. Sunshine will actually shine through this part. Not a ton of sunshine, but there is sunshine, so it feels like it'll be pretty breathable. It's winter here, so it's a little bit harder to tell. But overall, nice, comfortable upper, kind of hugs the top of your foot, feels robust. This is not cheap. This is not flimsy. This will last quite a while, I believe. So happy with the upper here. I like the tongue too. The tongue is good. It is wide, it's thin, it's that grippy like Hypalon material on top, and it works really well. And of course, I've already mentioned I love the regular laces, unlike the quick lace system on the old React shoe. There is no heel cup in this though, so you can notice, yes, the heel is super stiff, but there is no internal heel cup there. At least if there is one, it's readily foldable. But the collar comes up higher as compared to the Metcon 6 and Metcon 5. So this shoe actually fits me much better, more comfortably as compared to the Metcon 5 and the Metcon 6. So overall, no complaints at all about the upper. I would say it's pretty good. The only thing that I wonder about is the lack of a heel cup, but I haven't been able to identify that as a particular problem so far. Here's the upper on the X1, and so you'll notice if you angle it right, you'll see kind of the Vector logo, the Vector style of the Reebok logo there. But if you look at it from any other angle, it just looks kind of plain, kind of boring. The other thing a lot of people called out, I have the knit version of this shoe as well. This is the grit upper. This is more, it's a stretchy, it's more like what Flex Weave was on last year's shoe, although this isn't the same material. Reasonably tough, reasonably breathable. Light does not shine through it. Comfortable, kind of hugs the top of your foot. I have no complaints other than this looks kind of generic, and it just doesn't look all that sophisticated. It just looks like a boring upper, quite frankly. I think the build quality on this grit shoe is leaps and bounds better than what was on the knit shoe that I have. The knit shoe, you can see a ton of glue in quite a few areas, which, for the most part, I don't really see unacceptable amounts of that here on this. There is not really much of a heel cup in this thing either. That is pretty flexible overall. And here's another big difference. You can see that the X1 has a much taller collar, and it's got this aggressive inward curve. So this is already causing problems for some people, because this will rub on the back of your heel, on the back of your ankle, and it's soft. But I tell you what, any part of your skin that you're not used to getting friction on, and then you change things up with something like this, that will cause blistering or abrasions or cuts, scrapes, and things like that. And so some people are already complaining about that. I notice that too, especially when running. You can feel this pressing on the back of your heel. It's not a showstopper for me, but that aggressive curve, that might be a problem for some people. Beyond that, I don't like this skinny, wimpy little tongue. It's too thin. It's got some padding, but then it's like, it's not wide enough to fully cover the whole shoe, and I just don't care for it. I do like the tall collar. I don't like the curve so much. And in Nano X, the collar came up straight like that instead of curved. But I do like the tallness. It feels pretty comfortable. Reebok says this is the comfort collar to give you a locked-in feel. And that's, specifically what that curve is for. Let's talk sizing real quick. So the Nano X1, in my opinion, runs true to size. This is a US men's size 11. That is the size I wear in most running shoes and most training shoes. It's got really good width as well. So very comfortable up here. On my other video, I explained how the outsole is not as wide as on the Nano X, but the part where your toes actually goes, this top part, is actually, in my opinion, just as wide as on the Nano X. So continues to have excellent toe room up front. Toe cap is good. The toe guard is nice and supportive. If you're doing things like push-ups and burpees and stuff like that, your toes feel nice and well protected in this shoe. The React Metcon Turbo, I had to go half size up on these. So I bought an 11 and an 11.5. This is the 11.5. The 11s had to go back. Why? The width, it was too tight here, and my toes felt cramped. So it feels like this shoe, the React Metcon Turbo, is both short and narrow. So I had to go a half size up to get the proper fit on this thing. But once I did that, again, I love the new taller collar, and it fits quite well. How about weight? The React Metcon Turbo, they've done things specifically to make it lighter. The rope wrap is minimized. There's things like the truncated heel counter, things like that. Long story short, this is just a tiny bit over 13 ounces. So they shaved off 0.8, 0.9 of an ounce compared to, say, the Metcon 6. So still, I wouldn't call a 13-ounce shoe lightweight. That's definitely middle of the road. That's heavy by running shoe standards, middle of the road by cross-trainer standards. The Reebok Nano X1, on the other hand, again, this is a grit option. This is 12.1 ounces, so this is a solid ounce lighter than the Nike React Metcon Turbo. Usually a difference of an ounce you can feel picking them up. Will an ounce difference make a big deal over the long term? I don't know. It's not a ton of a difference, right? But this is the lighter shoe, the Nano X1. So that's my side-by-side comparison of the Reebok Nano X1 and the Nike React Metcon Turbo. Pros of the Nano X1: it's lighter. It has cushion that is noticeably better for running, but also walking long distances and things like that. Still a cross trainer though, not a running shoe. Don't expect a lot of pillow-like cushion on this shoe. Things I don't like about the Nano X1, the cons: looks kind of cheap, looks boring. Hard to quantify that. And, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It looks okay to me. I definitely like the grit better than the knit option. I will say that. But I feel like they could have done more with the upper. I'm happy with the material, the grit stuff itself. It's just the styling's a little bit boring. Don't like the skinny little tongue. And this curves a little bit too much. I think there's going to be problems with that for various people. Pros and cons of the Nike React Metcon Turbo. So it's got React foam. Not a ton of it, but there is React foam there. It's a subtle improvement over the Metcon 6. Secure fit, no heel slippage for me, which was a slight problem for me with the Metcon 6. The higher, taller collar helps there. Looks high quality, looks good. It's a sharp looking shoe. And, it's good for lifting. It's stable, it's firm. But man, is it noisy, as the Metcon shoes always have been. The arch support feels a little bit questionable, a little bit weak, and these are expensive. So these at the moment are $20 more than the Reebok Nano X1. So here's the thing. How do you decide? How do you choose? Well, it's going to boil down to, what are you doing more? Are you doing more running, or are you doing more lifting? That's the way I would break it down. The other factors are, which one looks better to you? Which one can you afford? Ultimately, which one will fit you better? Maybe the curve is too great on the X1. Maybe you don't like the center section on the React Metcon Turbo. There's all kinds of individual differences to account for there. So I hope this review has been helpful. If you liked, please subscribe. We post new shoe reviews regularly. Thank you. Have a good day.